Hey everyone, and welcome back to episode 40 of Columbia City. For those who are new, Columbia City is my Pacific Northwest series that'll never be finished, but we're going to keep trying. Today we're going to actually move into the rural part of the map and make some farm plots and suburban development. I think you're going to enjoy it, so let's get straight into it. Okay, Columbia City is back. We're back here. A couple of you thought the series was over. Don't worry, it's not over. We're back. I said I was basically going to be going on an indefinite hiatus with Columbia City until I fixed the frame rate. I fixed the frame rate enough to work on a rural video for this one episode. I don't know when the next episode's going to be, but I'm continually working on fixing the frame rate for the city, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later. If you're not aware, I've been working on my new project, the Netherlands, where I'm building a city inspired by Groningen in the Netherlands. It's a really fun project, and the response for that series has been beyond anything I could ever comprehend, and we'll talk more about that probably in every video of that series, although it'll probably get old me just, thanking everybody for the feedback. But my last video from the Netherlands, episode 2, has something like 600 comments right now. It has not been up for, it's been up for 5 days now or something like that. That's a level of feedback that I haven't really experienced before, so it's going to take a little getting used to. Hopefully a couple of you who are new from that series are following me over to this series here. This is going to be, I've been running this series on my channel for about a year and a little bit now. It's inspired by Seattle. We're building a pretty detailed city here. And I talked in the last episode about how my frame rate's been really bad and I've been getting a lot of crashes, so I need to work on that before continuing, and I'm sort of doing that slowly as we go. What I realized is a lot of the trees that I place on the map are very, very detailed when they shouldn't be, and there are a lot of bushes in my tree brush packs that really shouldn't be there and should instead be other taller trees that are more noticeable, because Gray Flame's got a ton of different awesome tree packs on the workshop, but some of them are higher in triangles than others, and they're amazing, and none of them are overly high on triangles. It's just that placing them all over the map is a little bit crazy because my frame rate is already so bad. But there is a filler pine pack that Gray Flame released, so I'm trying that in this episode. You'll notice, in addition to the I believe the horse chestnut by Mr. Mason, I put in that pack just so I get a little bit of deciduous action, but mostly it's just the low poly filler pines by Gray Flame, and I'll place a couple of other ones like the hemlocks, but not in the main brush that I'm using. And the style I'm going to sort of plan this area in is going to be inspired by what I see around Mount Hood in Portland, Oregon, or on the outskirts of Portland, where there's sort of these farms or plots that aren't necessarily farms. Sometimes they're covered in trees, but they're clearly marked and they're square. They've been surveyed. They're very intentionally individual plots. It's not just a continuous forest, from what I can tell at least. We're going to have more detailed farms that don't quite follow that exact grid as we go a little bit closer to the city, but we're really on the outskirts of the map now. The further out we get, the less detailed I'm going to go with these, but I'm sort of going to have some various dirt roads. I'm going to have a couple of houses maybe on the plots, very, very minimal detailing, and just tree brushes largely on lower strength than I'd normally use, just because we're on the way edge of the map. I end up using a style of sort of nature detailing here, not necessarily detailing, but the way I place these trees in the clusters that you'll see is, I've never been to the Pacific Northwest, so I'm not 100% sure if it's realistic, but here in California, I just moved to Northern California. I'm actually recording this from Berkeley. I've been talking about how I've been, I was going to move pretty soon. I have moved, and I'm sort of all set up here. I'll talk about that a little bit more later, but yeah, here we've got redwoods right next to very, very open, grassy fields, so it's a contrast like that. I'm not sure exactly what it's like in the Pacific Northwest. I'm assuming there's more constant cover with evergreens, but Here at least there are a lot of open spaces, and I think they look really cool, and they're a lot of fun to detail because you can put trees only in the sort of ridges and the canyons, and it looks really satisfying. It's basically one of the main things that makes $2.20 series Marble Mountain look unbelievably satisfying from above. Like, that's the perfect series to make a vanilla series, because you're able to do very little tree placement, but the tree placement that is there is superb. And I mean, $2.20 at this point has completely mastered how to put down California style foliage on a large scale in a city, and it looks really, really good. And I'm sort of going for something a little bit like that here, mostly to save FPS, but also because it looks sort of cool to have some of these ridges be open and not just have it be completely covered by trees. So hopefully that's at least somewhat realistic for the Pacific Northwest. You can see I'm starting to place the plots here. Sort of, I'm using 500 meter by 500 meter squares. I'm just using fences from Park Life, and what I'm going to be doing with them is selecting them with Move It, so that when I select the fences, I'm only selecting, you see I'm using the picker with Move It, so I can select all of them and delete them at once. But having the squares like this as a guideline allows me to sort of start placing trees around the borders and not within them, or natural resources. You'll see it ends up being, like, I didn't know what this episode was going to turn into. I just wanted to do some rural work because I wanted a nice high frame rate, but it ended up being very, very productive, and I want to get your feedback on this before I place it on other parts of the map, because there are definitely other parts of the map that could use work like this, but I'm not exactly sure if I should go ahead with those yet. And obviously we're going to have different styles of farms in different parts of the city, and also part of the map is going to be technically Canada, so assuming Canada exists, we're going to have to give it a slightly different style of, land surveying, but I'm not exactly sure what that would be, like how different that would be. So some feedback on, I mean, first of all, if this is generally realistic for Pacific Northwest surveying, but also what I should do differently for sort of Western Canada style farms, because we're definitely going to have those on the other side of a future bridge that we build. Once again, if we ever get there, like, I need to start adding that caveat, because I don't know how long the series is going to run. I'm just going to keep going as long as I possibly can and improve the FPS by removing trees and various things and replacing them with lower poly trees. That's sort of my general strategy, because I realized I can't remove a ton of assets. I'm not exactly sure how many I'll be able to remove in the long term. In the short term, I actually loaded the game with loading screen mod, where you've got a setting where it only loads the assets that have already been placed, and I actually only loaded half of the assets in, which was pretty crazy, meaning half of the assets I have downloaded I'm not using, but from what I can tell, those assets are assets that I'm going to be using really, really soon when I'm building suburban areas, so I don't know how many I can exactly remove. We'll see, but for now, I'm gonna mostly try to just go into downtown off camera. Maybe I could do a live stream sort of working on this, which, by the way, I have gigabit internet now, so live streams are hopefully going to be a thing. But go into those areas in downtown and replace existing foliage with stuff that's a little bit less intensive. Obviously, I'm going to have specific foliage that is just totally crucial to a Pacific Northwest project, like all of Gray Flame's amazing trees. Those are going to have their place in the city, but not everywhere, because I want to be able to expand here. And yeah, and also props, we're going to have like fewer props, and I'm also using ultimate level of detail to sort of decrease the amount of stuff that's loaded in full definition, and that's seemingly helping my FPS a little bit. Basically, while I'm recording, I'm going to have different graphic settings than I'll have when I'm recording cinematics, is long story short, and we're going to be removing some stuff in downtown, replacing it with a little bit less intensive stuff, and hopefully I can do some work with loading screen mod to try to get my asset count overall down. But that's like the strategy for how I'm gonna save this series. But I'm gonna save it, don't worry, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna figure it out, because I'm not just letting go right now. The Pacific Northwest, my fascination with it continues to grow as time goes on. I think it's a really, really beautiful and interesting part of the country, part of the world, and I don't want to give up this amazing opportunity to continue working on a large-scale Pacific Northwest project just because of bad FPS. I'm going to figure out how to fix that and make it work. So yeah, those are just some thoughts, but Yeah, as you can see, I'm sort of placing more trees here. We're really on the edge of the map, but I want to fill these plots up as we go even further towards the edge of the map, just because I want the map to look complete. We'll have some overviews a little bit later so you can see what it looks like. Once again, I'm going less detailed and lower tree density the further out I go. But as I'm working in these ridges and like going around these dirt roads and paths that I've placed, I am placing trees around them. Now that I think of it, it's a little weird how the paths wind through all the different fields, but maybe they're all owned by the same landowner or something like that. Not exactly sure, but I don't even know if these are really agricultural fields, or at least many of them. Who knows? Definitely give me feedback in the comments. I've still never been to the Pacific Northwest, which I want to go there very badly, but obviously there's, you know, some things restricting that from being a reality in the year 2020. But I will go to the Pacific Northwest and hopefully live there someday. I'd like to live there someday. In Portland, Vancouver, or Seattle, any of those cities would be amazing places to live in. And I've got a lot of influences from that are similar to the ones that you see in those cities here in Berkeley, in California, which has been really amazing. But yeah, definitely there are a lot of unique things to be experienced in the Pacific Northwest. So we're basically done with most of the large-scale work that we're going to be doing in this video. At this point, we've basically covered at least a quarter of the map in new foliage. This area I'm working on right now is definitely not supposed to be farmland or divided in the same way that the other land is. This is definitely some sort of state park or something like that, because there's this beautiful river and there's some amazing looking like cliffs there. I'd totally love to build a hiking trail there in the future. This will probably be the area where we build some sort of national park of some sort, because the other option for where to build that area is the other side of the map, and the mountain is there, and we can't build anywhere close to the mountain, even though I'd totally love to, and I'd totally love to build like a Mount Rainier area. It's just that the mountain is a prop, and the closer you get to it, the lower the quality is, so I can't really build that close to it. But that other side of the map where we were just building, I think we could definitely manage there. Okay, now that we finished the large-scale work here, we get to move on to the slightly less satisfying, but probably more interesting work. I mean, okay, the large-scale nature work, it's probably my favorite thing to do in the game, but I also really wanted to build a trailer park here, and we're doing it, and I'm using the DK assets. I've only used these a couple of times ever since I've started playing the game in 2015, but whenever I use them, I absolutely love them. I actually think I'm going to use the hide it mod, because there's some weird sheds behind them that don't look quite right, and I'd rather add my own. Other than that, I think hide it removes everything else that I really hate about the assets, because they've got tons of vanilla props that look really ugly. But if you use hide it, you can remove basically anything you don't like in the game visually, so I definitely recommend that mod. I didn't use it until a couple months ago, and I don't know how I lived with anything, because it makes a lot of buildings usable. You can remove parking spaces, which is the biggest thing I love about that mod, because there's some parking spaces in some buildings that you just so don't want there, and you can remove those, so that's really, really satisfying. Okay, so now we're moving on to working on the McMansion area. So I'm just trying to figure out how to plan this road over here, because it's going to be off that main road. I didn't want to do it just directly off the main road, so I built a sort of, it's not a grid, but there aren't really any curves or anything here. Initially, I'm going to place just this collection of different brick-looking, maybe decently new, trying to look old McMansions, if you get what I mean. Like they're not like the very modern looking McMansions that you might find in California a lot of the time. They're more lots of brick and stuff like that, and they're generally a similar style, different sizes, different asset creators, but I'm just trying to stick to a generally similar style. The level of detail here, I'm just sort of experimenting a little bit because I'm trying to see how much I can get away with having a very low level of detail, because a lot of these assets are already decently detailed themselves, but some of their driveways are really short. So you'll see in a moment what I do is I'll end up moving them away from the road and trying to get them to be just further off the road. Because if you're buying a big house this far out, you don't want to be right next to a road. You're like the type of person who thinks that they will be the happiest person in the world if they just had their enormous house that was built with really terrible materials and also an acre of land that you're going to do nothing with. Literally no offense to people who live. I just don't understand why you would want this. I just want, if I'm living in a rural area, all I want is a cottage and an RV. That's like all I care about. I don't want no McMansion, but I guess for the people living here, they're gonna have probably some trees separating their houses a lot of the time, so we're gonna do that a little bit later. Don't worry, we'll use a bunch of different trees to do that. Right now I'm just sort of smoothing out some of the slopes around here because it was a lot hillier. And I'm using Ronix's asphalt roads, which will look a little bit weird on slopes because some of them, they have some props on them that don't terrain conform, so they sort of stick out. But mostly it's fine, and we're not going to be looking at this up close whatsoever, so I don't really care. They just look pretty good from above because the lines are nice, or not the lines, just sort of the wear markings, but yeah, just adding some like electricity poles. But you can see the asphalt roads that I add sort of go over the driveways, or the driveways will go over them. And it's not perfect, but it's the best I'm going to be able to do with these assets. I know I could remove those driveways with Prop It Up, but Prop It Up is not a mod I really want to download for a city of this scale. I want to just stick with what I've got right now, and I can totally survive with having a little bit of the smaller driveway poking through the big asphalt driveway. And I know it looks a little weird having the asphalt driveways be the exact same road as the main road, but for something this far out, I don't really care. Mostly what I'm trying to do is just all I'm doing detail-wise is separating these houses with trees using Prop Line Tool. That's all I got to do, and then they get a nice big acre or half acre of lands that is private, and you get the whole McMansion dream, and you've got a mountain in the background. That's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome, but I'd rather live in a tiny little cottage down the road. That would be better for me. I would enjoy that more. I'd rather live in a cottage and have a nice little trail near my house. That would be nice, but yeah. Anyway, I'm sort of extending this gravel road here. I extended all the way to the main road on the other side, but there was a big hill, so I sort of built around it. I'm going to try to build around nature rather than messing with it too much here. But yeah, anyway, we're sort of wrapping up the time lapse here. Sorry there was no Q&A segment today. I just don't have time to work on that right now. I literally have, I am recording this at 10 p.m. I'm going to render this. I'm going to upload it, hopefully really quickly with the gigabit internet. But I don't really have time to work on a Q&A segment right now. But that segment is still alive, and I'll bring it to the Netherlands series soon. Don't worry about it. It's still here. But for now, we're just going to hop straight into the overview of the project we just worked on. And wow, that looks really satisfying. With the hills, and it feels like somewhere in Northern California in the spring, where everything's sort of blooming and there's tons of green grass, because a lot of areas in California the grass will be really, really dry in the summer, and then once springtime hits or the winter, there'll be tons of rain, and for a couple months it'll be really, really green. That's sort of what it looks like here, but I'm assuming there's a lot of this in the Pacific Northwest as well with the open areas. I'm mostly just having open areas like this because, one, it looks cool. Two, my frame rate's really good around here. Like, I think at this level, like looking down here, I think I'm getting like 20 or 30 FPS in this view. Wow, plane just went by, nice. Anyway, though, we've got some ground level shots to close off the video. Just want to get on ground level, experience some ambient sounds quickly. And wow, this McMansion neighborhood looks like a McMansion neighborhood, but it's got lots of cool foliage and stuff. I made sure to add some blooming bushes and trees around here. And then here's the trailer park we placed. I did not detail whatsoever here, but the props that are already with these trailer homes actually look pretty good. other than those little sheds. But they stand alone pretty well. And I'm using the Ronix mud roads, if you're wondering here. But yeah, that's about it for the video. Hopefully you all enjoyed. I'm sorry it was a shorter one. I'm sorry there was no Q&A segment, but I'm actually really surprised I managed to put out such a quality video on a week where I moved across the state. Like, half of this was recorded in a different city, which is pretty crazy. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, a like would be appreciated. That would be great. You can subscribe if you're new around here. Hit the bell icon next to the subscribe button to get notified whenever I upload a video so you never miss an upload. If you want to support me, you can do that over on Patreon. That's in the description. Quick shout out to some patrons: Fergs Pimp, Forrest Corbett, Steve Gordon, Tran, and Tommy Hines Jr. Thank you all so much for your support. Highly appreciated. Tons of perks over there. You could also just give me a one-time donation on coffee. You can also follow me on Twitter. That's in the description too. But I don't have much more. Hopefully you all enjoyed. Hopefully you enjoyed the cinematics, and I'll see you next time.